All right, what's up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast real estate tip. And on today's GSD Mode podcast, I really wanted to break down and do a deep dive into all these NAR changes that are coming about. I really wanted to hone in and focus on the buyer consultation process. And there's really three primary things I want to cover with you here today. Now, I know that we're all in different states, different locations. You know, my real estate business, my real estate team happens to be located in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, I know that you're in a different state, different location, or at least the vast majority of you. However, Arizona did roll out their new draft version of the buyer broker agreement of what it's going to look like once these changes roll out here in August. So I just wanted to show you a couple snippets of that to give you an idea of what it might possibly look like in your state. Now, make sure that you're getting with your state, make sure that you're getting with your brokers so you can have an identify, get an idea of what your buyer broker agreement is going to look like. But I just wanted to show this just in case it's helpful for you. I also wanted to hit on number 2 today, hit on the Zillow touring agreement that Zillow came out with. Now, again, I know that you probably saw articles and other podcasts on this, but now that I've done a deep dive and I've had a time to really internalize it, I wanted to talk about different ways that I think can be effective in our business to utilize some version of this if it's allowed upon in our states. This is going to be one of those things where some states might allow something like this. Some states don't allow something like this. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say I like how the Zillow touring agreement reads as is, but I think that there's some small modifications and tweaks to it that we can do where it might become a beneficial tool inside of our own business. And I'll break down to what that looks like. Then from there, I want to do a deep dive into what it's going to look like and take to go out there and deliver an effective buyer consultation. I know for a lot of you with our industry, treating the buy side of the business isn't been as strict as the list side of the business. Now, if you've been watching or listening to my podcast forever and for a long time, this is something I've been preaching for 17 plus years inside my own real estate business, where we treat, and internally in my team, we treat the buy side every bit as strict and as diligent as we do the listing side of the presentation, so meaning that we're, have a buyer consultation nailed down just like a listing presentation, but then on that, making sure that we are getting ready, willing, able, committed buyer clients before we actually go out there and start, showing them properties and working with them. So this has been, something that's been in place for me for 17, plus past years, but I get and I understand that for the vast majority of our industry, this isn't commonplace. And for a lot of you maybe watching or listening to this, and whether you're an individual agent, maybe your team or a brokerage owner, maybe some of your agents haven't been accustomed to, really honing in and nailing that buyer consultation. So I want to break that down. Like, what should an effective buyer consultation process have in it? How do you articulate your value? How do you get them to be ready, willing, able, and committed, meaning getting that buyer broker agreement signed up front? Because with these changes that are rolling out, again, they're supposed to roll out here in July. Now it looks like it's going to be mid-August, but several of these changes are, okay, number one, you got to get this buyer broker agreement signed before you can physically go show a single property. Then from there, within that buyer broker agreement, we have to have what our compensation is going to be disclosed, negotiated upon, agreed upon on, and signed on the dotted line before we can go out there and show a single property. So it's going to be that much more imperative and that much more essential to ensure that we are nailing that buyer consultation up front. Again, things in my opinion that we should have all been doing for a long time, but shoulda, woulda, coulda, now that time is coming where it's going to remove that element of choice in our industry where you're going to have to hone in this skill set and dial this in. Now, with that being said, okay, these changes were supposed to be rolling out here in July. Now it looks like they're going to be mid-August, and we'll see if that gets pushed back. Look, this is a huge overhaul. If you think about this, I mean, there's over 500 some MLSs just throughout the states, throughout the US. So they all have to, issue new buyer broker agreements, probably new listing agreements, new purchase contracts. They got to, change fields in the MLS. I mean, it's a shit ton of work and a big overhaul behind the scenes. So it might even get pushed back beyond, this mid-August date. We'll see. But the good news is this gives us plenty of time to ensure that you're preparing for this. And it's not enough just to have awareness and have the information. You need to be practicing. You need to be preparing. And one of the ways, and my recommendation is making sure that you're nailing your buyer consults now. Don't be just waiting for this time to roll out. Make sure you're delivering on your buyer consults. Even maybe you don't have the new buyer broker agreement for your market yet, that you can start using. Okay, like Arizona's released theirs, but you'll see here when I share my screen, this is like post-dated till July 2024. I can't even start using this one yet. Now they've given us a glimpse of what it's going to look like, but I can't start using it even if I wanted to start using it right now. But I can use what we have that's in place. So at least it gets me in the habit of doing the work and nailing that consult right now to ensure you that much further prepared. Look, history favors he or she that is most prepared. So those are the three things we're going to break down and do a deep dive in here today on the podcast. But real quick, before we do so, look, if you're an individual agent, team leader, or real estate brokerage owner, and your business is not exactly where you need it to be, maybe you're operating down here, but you know your full potential's up here, whether business declining, staying stagnant, maybe it's growing, just not growing at the pace that you truly want, need it to grow at, and you just do not know exactly what you must do to get exactly from where you're at to where it is that you want to go. If that is you, I invite you to schedule a 100% free, 100% zero pressure Zoom coaching call with me personally. It's going to be a 1 hour long Zoom coaching call with you and I. We're going to do a deep dive breakdown into your own personal business, where your business is currently at, where your 12-month goals are, what your long-term goals, dreams, and visions are for your real estate business, what you're currently doing, what your biggest obstacles are. Then from there, I'm going to break down while we're on this call together exactly what my recommended strategy is to get you from where you're at to where you want to go in the quickest, most effective, efficient, profitable manner possible. And you have my word on this. I'm here to pour into you. I'm here to make sure that you are dialed in. I will make sure 100% that you do not leave this free Zoom coaching call without knowing exactly what you must do and what you need to start taking action on. We're going to eliminate all that guesswork so you know exactly what you personally need to do inside your business to get from where you're at to where it is that you want to go. So if you want to take advantage of this, go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. As soon as you book that call, there's going to be a really important video. Please make sure to watch that. It's a quick video, but I want to make sure that you are most prepared for this call so you can get the most out of it. So again, if you want to check that out, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. All right, let's jump back into this. Again, there's three primary things I want to cover with you. Number one, I'm going to share my screen here in just a second and go through the new draft version of the Arizona buyer broker agreement. As I said, I get and I understand that we're all in different states. So, but this might just be helpful to give me a glimpse of what yours possibly could look like. I was really excited when I saw this come out. One of the challenging things with this whole NAR settlement changes and all this BS going on right now is there's so much vagueness. There's so much gray area where there's been a lot of unknowns. And as business owners, especially those of us, which I know is most of you, that are, high D personalities on the disc, that are driver's personalities, man, we like certainty. We like to know exactly what we got to, how we need to adapt, what we need to adjust for. When there's all this unknown, all this gray area, it can be difficult, for us to manage, because we're like, well, hell, how do we prep for the unknown? So in my mind, like, I didn't know exactly how this buyer broker agreement was going to look, how it was going to be laid out, how much resistance it possibly could, create as we were going through this. But when I saw it, man, I was really excited about it. So I'm going to share my screen here with you guys and just, do a quick deep dive into that so you guys can see. And when I say a quick deep dive, it's going to be real quick here. I'm not going to go through the whole entire buyer broker agreement with you guys. And I'm going to do my best to explain this, because I know that there's a lot of you that are listening to this while you're driving. So now the vast majority of this buyer broker agreement, at least for the one here in the state of Arizona. Now, this is, again, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. And you can see up in the top right up here, won't let me highlight, but at the very top right where my mouse is kind of hovering over here, this is post-dated July of 2024. Now it looks like that's going to be pushed back to past August. And again, yours is probably going to look much different. We're all in different states, different locations. If you're watching this, you're here in Arizona. Okay, like, this is going to obviously pertain to you. Now, the vast majority of this is the same. Yeah, right. Where we're going through, okay, listing out who the parties are, what the time agreement is, what the expiration. So like if I, showed them a property, I was procuring cause of that property, had a bunch of work into that property. Maybe they're waiting until the date that this, buyer broker agreement expires so they can go out there and put an offer on that property, try to cut me out of the deal. There's a compensation within so many dates after expiration for protection there. So all of this stuff, and I'm not going to go through this stuff because this is all old stuff that our previous buyer broker agreement had in it. Make sure that you get to know your contracts. Like, make sure that you know your agreements, that you know what it means, that you know how to explain it very simply to your clients that you're representing. Now on page 2 here, this is the primary changes. right? So when we look at these primary changes here, now with this, like we always had to disclose what compensation was, but previously it was like, you could put in a percentage or a dollar amount, or just leave it blank for like, hey, whatever, the listing agent is offering, no longer is vagueness allowed, right? It's like, okay, we got to have a direct percentage, we got to have a direct dollar amount or an other in here, when it comes to that. Then there's some added disclosures. So in here, okay, compensation from the seller, seller's broker. So a seller or seller's broker may offer compensation to the broker. Buyer authorizes broker to accept compensation from seller or seller's broker, which shall be credited against buyer broker compensation. So this is just stating that, hey, the seller, might offer this compensation for you. Now, if seller or seller's broker's offer of compensation is greater than broker compensation, broker shall be paid the broker compensation and balance shall be credited to buyer. So where this line statement is coming into play here with the NAR settlement changes is, and again, these are things, this probably isn't new news to you, but on how the NAR settlement change lawsuit proposal reads is that whatever percentage or dollar amount that we have agreed upon on our buyer agent representation fee, we cannot receive anything higher than that. So let's just say, as an example, I don't know, there's a new builder in your market that's been sitting on some aged inventory they can't sell. They go out there and they start offering just some, higher buyer agent fee, co-broke. Like I saw a lot of this, we're seeing some of this even now in my market, but like during the great financial crisis, like, dude, I mean, there were some builders like offering, 6%, 8%, some cases I've seen as high as 10% co-brokes, right, to go out there and bring buyers to entice them. Well, if you have, whatever that percentage is, whether it's, flat dollar amount or 1% or 2% or 3%, whatever you agree upon and sign on this buyer broker agreement up front. And this is going to be something that's going to be across the board for all of us, according to the NAR lawsuit settlement agreement, as long as, now they've gotten preliminary approval sign off from the judge. So, unless the DOJ comes in, cracks down on this further, but at least as it stands right now, this looks like how it's going to be. So if the seller for any, way, shape, form, or fashion is offering more than what is on here, okay, we're not allowed to receive that. That is going to then be offered and credited to the actual buyer, right? Then from there, it's also disclosing in here, seller's broker of offer compensation is less than the broker compensation. Buyer may request seller to pay the broker compensation as part of the offer to purchase the property. Any compensation not paid by the seller or seller's broker shall be paid by the buyer. So, okay, that's just saying, hey, if we can't negotiate where the seller's willing to offer that or pay that percentage or that dollar amount or whatever, okay, then it's going to be up to the buyer to pay for that, for that fact. And all things that we all had understanding of and awareness of coming into this. There's a little VA disclosure in here, for that. No need for me to go into that. Now, here is the part about it that I thought was, nice that Arizona added this in there, right? And everything up above, like, I like the way that reads. I think, Arizona did a good job at making this simplistic to go out there and read and understand and making it where there's going to be, it's pretty straightforward, right? And I can see as we're visualizing this, going through our buyer consultations of, okay, not being a lot of resistance on, all these changes. Then in here, there is a disclosure that we get the buyers to sign up front and indicate up front where, okay, I'll just read this exact verbiage for you. So if you're driving down the road and you can't see this, now there's a check mark box here if you're not seeing this that says buyer directs broker not to show property listings unless the broker compensation has been advertised or negotiated to be paid by seller or seller's broker, and then there's a fillable option in there. So essentially this is saying that, hey, if the seller is not offering the compensation, whether that be through the agent or whether it be through concessions, where you'd have to come out of pocket on these, do you grant me permission up front just to omit those listings from showing you those properties? So it's just getting this disclosed, sign upon, agreed upon up front of, hey, do you want me to show you these properties? Or if you're not in a position where you can, compensate me for my fees on the buyer agent representation side, should we just omit those properties altogether and not waste our time going looking at those properties, right? So it's disclosing that, but getting that signed, initialed, agreed upon up front, which I think that is a good did good disclosure there. Everything else is pretty much the same, talking about, hold harmless and in different things there where we get everybody to sign and draft through. So, that's just giving you a quick glimpse of what Arizona's looks like, and again, I was really excited about this when I saw this overall. With that, I'm looking at this thinking, okay, like I could, based on what my experience is right now delivering buyer consultations, what my experience is with the lack of resistance when it comes to, getting buyer clients to fully commit to us and working with us. I don't really see any resistance points in there. I think they did a good job at laying this out to giving us to be able to articulate our value and move forward with that. Now I want to transition to part 2 of this podcast, which is talking about the touring agreement. Then I'll get in with Zillow's touring agreement. Then I will get into, like I said, nailing the buyer consultation process itself. So with the touring agreement, and it doesn't say Zillow at the top, I just got this off Zillow's website. So this is their touring agreement that they came out with. Now, full disclosure on this, and Zillow has been very upfront with this. And look, whether you hate Zillow, love Zillow, don't like Zillow, do any business with Zillow, I think that this is something to just take into account and look at, because there can be different ways that we might be able to utilize this inside of our businesses for different scenarios and situations, right? And that's really why I'm talking about this here today. When it comes to this. Now, the first thing is, and again, Zillow's been, very, very upfront with this of like, look, this might be approved in certain states and might not be allowed in other states, right? Because this kind of goes against all the changes of like mandating this buyer broker agreement to be signed and before you can physically go out there and show a property, and so forth with this. Now, it's a very simplistic touring agreement, which essentially just says, that, hey, we're just, this agreement is in place and the only role of the agent is essentially to open up these doors for you for this period of time. You don't have, fiduciary duty here, so if I were to break this down and just walk through this really quickly with you, we're just, naming, okay, the brokerage and location, for the agreement, purpose of this agreement. So I'll just read this very quickly. So purpose of this agreement is for buyer or for broker to consult with buyer regarding specific properties and assist buyer in locating and touring new properties. These activities collectively constitute the touring services. So very cut and dry of what this is and what this isn't. In connection with providing the touring services, buyer shall adhere to any and all non-waivable duties required under applicable state law for real estate brokers working with consumer non-agency capacity. So it's, disclosure out there, this is a non-agency capacity. Buyer and broker agree that they are not entering into an agency relationship and buyer is not a client. Buyer acknowledges buyer representation that buyer has not signed an exclusive buyer broker agreement for the location currently in force with another broker. So I like that component of this. It's them, giving us at least something in writing that, hey, they have not entered a buyer broker agreement with somebody else. Duration of this agreement. This agreement is entered into on this month, this day, and shall expire 7 days at 11:59 p.m. after this agreement. And then there's a no fee for the touring service. So no fee, buyer shall not owe or pay buyer broker any of fee for touring services. If broker is going to provide buyer with brokerage services beyond this touring services, buyer and broker will enter into a separate agreement for such additional broker services. These fees or commissions and the parties agree to for those services are not set by law and are fully negotiable and shall be documented in this agreement, right? And then goes through the equal housing opportunity. Everybody signs, boom, boom, boom. Right? Okay. So first off, let me go through what I don't like about this, right? And the big thing that stands out to me, is, and look, I'm not sitting here saying that, like I'm sure that Zillow has their rhyme to the reason as to why they're doing this. I'm talking about using this in other capacities inside of our business. Like let's just say as an example, you get a sign call, you haven't had a chance to meet them yet. They don't feel comfortable with coming in and meeting with you for a buyer consultation and signing a buyer broker agreement when they haven't even met with you yet. You're a stranger to them and they just really want to see that property, for that one time, right? With that, okay, getting something like this signed for just those one-off scenarios like that. Or, okay, like, I represent a lot of investor clients that are not willing to sign full on buyer broker agreements for a long period of time because they're maybe, buying 20, 30 units or sometimes hundreds of units on an annual basis in our market. And they need multiple different agents going out there and representing them. And they're, like I've got a lot of great investor clients that won't necessarily sign up. They'll sign a buyer broker agreement for a particular property, but if they want to go out there and view a property, something like this, or so just thinking of, okay, well, what are scenarios of this? Maybe I'm at an open house and I meet a buyer. That open house doesn't work for them, but I'm like, hey, there's one right down the street that I think you'll be really excited about. Haven't had a chance to really do a full buyer consultation with them yet. But my open house is done at 3. They want to meet up at 3:30 at that property, go tour that, gives me a chance to go meet with them at that property, then solidify that relationship, transition that into a buyer consult, then get that buyer broker agreement signed. So I'm really looking at this is, okay, could this be a good segue for like a mini dating, before we're going, like thinking of the buyer broker agreement, like, okay, now we're going steady, we're going, whatever, where this is just kind of like that quick dating service. The biggest thing in here that I personally don't like about it, that I would be, making amendments if we're allowed to use some element of this in my business, is removing this 7 days. I don't know why it couldn't have been for 24 hours. And I'm sure Zillow has their reasons. Look, Zillow's a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm sure they have their rhyme to their reasons with this. But I'm just looking, okay, if I'm going to use something like this in my business, maybe it's a 24-hour thing. Because I'm looking at this, okay, if I do 7 days, well, what then happens if I've got a client that wants to go look at 13 properties over the 7 days, and I've got to do, right? Then from there, it's well, yeah, it's 7 days, but if I got to show you X amount of properties in that 7 days, to me, it just having that 7 days in here just creates unnecessary potential obstacles that wouldn't have come up in the first place. So if this is something that our states allow, I think that, a variation of this could be really helpful in situations like sign calls, in situations like I was speaking about an open house, or with specific investor clients that, hey, you have a great working relationship with, but maybe they just, for their own business planning purposes, can't necessarily do a buyer broker agreement, are unwilling to, like a blanket one for a period of time. Might be able to do one specific to that property. And there's probably going to be workarounds, with the buyer broker agreement. You can have 24-hour periods. You can have, where it just is specific to that property. So not even that this would need to be necessary even, but something like this might create less resistance with getting this signed up front. It's kind of that, maybe 24-hour dating phase, or just for this one first property that I'm showing you. Then after this one, if you want to see more, we agree to sit down, have a consult, go through this, and then, go into the actual buyer broker agreement. So there are points of this, again, that, I do like about it. But there are some parts about it that, I'm not, that I would definitely be changing. Now, for me, though, again, I'm going to wait until, we see if that's even allowed in our state, because there's no reason for me to start making edits and changes to it and instituting how I'm going to use it in my business if the state of Arizona isn't even going to allow it in the first place. Okay, so those are the first two things that I just wanted to bring to your awareness, bring to your attention, just in case that's helpful. That's, beneficial for you of what those can look like, so you can start, identifying how to go out there and utilize those in your business. But again, the big thing is with this buyer broker agreement, this is not going to be a choice. This is going to be a mandate for all of us, before we can go out there and start, working for that client, showing them properties, and so forth, starting here in August or whenever these dates roll out. Something that we need to start be preparing for, and making sure that you're able to nail that buyer consultation in the first place. So let's dive into the buyer consultation process. So at a very high level for us as real estate professionals, what is the purpose of a buyer consultation? What is the purpose of a consultation? What is buyer consultation, listing presentation, agent recruiting presentation? Right? The purpose is to make sure that they're ready, willing, able, and committed. So what I mean by these, and these are all things that an effective presentation is going to have. So making sure that they're ready. Okay, like, are they ready to rock and roll? Is there an element of urgency, that they need to have, that they want to have inside their business? So I want to make sure that they're ready. Right? Because if I'm going to go out there and invest an insane amount of time, energy, and effort, which we all should be doing for our clients. So if they're all going way above and beyond for your clients and working your ass off for your clients, well, that's time away, obviously from your business, your family, other potential clients. So like, I need to make sure that they are, because we all should be committing to our clients at a very high level, but we need to vet them to make sure that we can actually serve them, that they need our services, want our services, with this. So I'm going to make sure that they're ready. right? So, and both on the buy side, list side, like, dude, is there motivation? Are they ready to rock and roll? Or is this just, they just want to go out there and check out homes because they love watching HGTV, but they actually have no, urgency to go out there and buy a property. And because there's those people out there that run your rag and let you go out there and show them homes for 3 years straight. Like, I want to make sure that they're ready. So, okay, ready is number one. And when I say this is in no particular order. Great, throughout this consultation process, as I'm vetting them, I'm going to make sure that they're ready, willing, able, committed, throughout the process, right? So then from there, once we understand that they're ready, okay, are they willing? Are they willing to do what it takes based on the economic climate that we are in? Like, there's a lot of people that maybe, let's just say as an example, and the climate, the markets can shift and change. But some of you are still in a market like this, but let's just, rewind the clocks a couple of years ago, where, okay, like I might have a buyer client that's like, hey, I want a house would pre-qualify for 500,000, okay, well, at that period of time, like, that craziness in like 2021 and, whatever, it's like, okay, that $500,000 house is actually going to cost you 600,000, even though it's only going to appraise at 500,000. There's going to be 100 offers on this property. You're going to have to come up with $100,000 differential. Got to make sure, of course, they're able to do all of that, but are they willing to do that? Are you willing to, like during that market climate? So are they willing to do what it takes, to go out there and make their real estate goals a reality in this marketplace? Like, okay, if I have a buyer client that comes to me right now, it's like, yeah, I want to go out there and buy a property, but I wanted at, 60% of market value. Okay, well, in this market climate with limited inventory, that's going to be very difficult to find. That may be somebody that, I don't want to commit to because I can't necessarily go out there and help them. If they're not ready, willing, able, and committed, it's hard to go out there and service and help them. Okay, so are they ready? Are they able? Or so are they willing? Now are they able? So are they qualified? Do they have proof of funds? Like, are they able? Do they have the, employment, like all of those things? Like, we got to make sure that we're spending that time to go out there and qualify them correctly. I've spent way too much time throughout my career exhausting way time where I just took the shortcuts, didn't do the due diligence up front, didn't nail a good buyer consultation, where it just exhausted and wasted insane amounts of my time. So we got to make sure that they're, able to go out there and do it. And then committed. So committed means, committed is twofold. Are they committed to the process and committed to doing what it takes? But then are they also committed to you as the real estate professional? Or, are they committed to me and working with me, throughout this process? So at a high level, that's what I'm trying to overcome through the consultation, because equally as important is them choosing you as a real estate professional. Okay, I'm also then looking at, okay, is this somebody that I want to work with? Is this somebody that makes sense for me and my business to take on? Somebody that I can help, that wants my help? Yeah, right. One of my mentors told me early on in my career, and this is a piece of advice that served me really well, is that they said that part of your success in this industry will be determined based on those that you choose to say no to. But there's it's not just that people that are turning us down. Like, there's more times I'm usually turning them down than vice versa with that, right? And I'm not saying that that's always going to be the case, but like, you need to vet people too and make sure that this is a great client for you to be taking on, and it makes sense to go out there. Because again, the hours and hours and hours that you might be exhausting with this client that you can't help, that doesn't actually want or need your help, that you can't help. Okay, well, that's like, you could have went out there and procured 5 other clients in that same amount of time, right? So, time is the one asset that we can never get back. Okay, so then from there, now let's talk about, so that's at a high level of what we're trying to accomplish with our actual overall consultation. Then from there, what is the frameworks that a great presentation is going to have within it? Okay, number one, it's going to inform and educate. So it's going to inform and educate them, and it's going to inform and educate you. Right. So, okay, we're speaking specifically to a buyer consultation. So I'm going to get them informed and educated. Now, this might sound weird, but I'm just here to tell you that the vast majority of human beings on this planet do not have extreme clarity on what they truly want. So I'm here to tell you, as I'm going through my buyer consultation process, like a lot of people, they think that they might have somewhat of an idea of what they want, but they really don't. Now some people more so than others, but I'm going to make sure that I'm, as I walk them through the process, I'm getting them to get extreme clarity on what they want, why they want it, why it's important to them within the move themselves. Right. But that's informing and educating them. It's also informing and educating me. But then I'm going to make sure that they're informed and educated on the overall process, the overall financial investment with the process, all of that. So a great presentation should inform and educate. It should articulate your value. That's component number 2. So articulate your value. Component number 3 is handle any objections. So just think of objections as just concerns. What are certain concerns, or hindrances that would get them from potentially moving forward. So again, I just look at an objection as just a concern that we are uneducated about or they're uneducated about. So I be able to identify what those concerns are, those resistance points. So then we can have a conversation with them and keep that, process moving forward. So being able to identify and handle any objections. And then component number 4 is lead seamlessly into the close. So getting them to become a committed client, throughout this process. So that's the overall framework. Now, how do I do that? So this is the framework I'm going to make sure that whether I'm doing a buyer consultation, listing presentation, agent recruit presentation, whatever it is, like those are kind of the components that any good presentation, any good consultation are going to have within there. Now, when it comes to my actual buyer consultation, I'll just go through mine with you, and then look, you can, doesn't mean it's got to be exactly like mine. You can tweak it, you can do whatever, but I'll just kind of walk you through the main points of this, how I move forward with it, and the rhyme to the reason of each part of how it fits in with this overall framework. Okay, so I first start off and I spend about half of my presentation on what I call my dream home form. Now, in the dream home form, and the reason why this is about 30 minutes of my 60-minute buyer consultation, not always, but in the majority of the time, is on this is where we're getting extreme clarity on what they want, why they want it, why it's important to them. Now, I should have led off with this sooner, but one of the reasons why I find that so many agents have a difficult time trying to get buyer consultations in the first place is they think that the consultation is all about them as the agent. And I get that. I get why it's important to us, because we know that 88% of buyers and sellers go with the first agent they meet with and connect with in person. So so many just think it's just about us, but it's not. Right? It's about the customer. It's about the client. And why do I say this? Yes, it's important. There's why it's a win for us. But here's another way to think about this: is it is an impossibility for you as a professional to serve and support your client at the highest possible level, accomplishing their real estate goals, unless you have an effective conversation or an effective consultation and do a deep dive into what is most important to them. How can we help them at the highest level? How can we help them? If you look at the surveys that are done right now, and depending on what survey that you read, it's anywhere between like 82%, 90%. But of buyers that have acquired a piece of real estate since over the last 4 years that have buyer's remorse. Okay, so for me, dude, one of my biggest objectives is to make sure that my clients do not have buyer's remorse. I want to do everything I possibly can to ensure that I'm helping them find exactly what they want. Well, if I don't do that effective conversation, if I don't have the intel I need up front, it's very difficult for me to be that unemotional professional, unemotional leader throughout this process. It's very easy for our clients to get emotionally attached to properties and go out there and have those emotions blindside them to something, a pain point that they may not see in the moment, because maybe it's got their dream kitchen, but it doesn't solve that commute, problem, which was the number one reason that they wanted to buy. And I know that dream kitchen probably higher probably than not is going to wane after 6 months, but because we didn't solve that main pain point as to why they're making this move in the first place, boom, the probability of buyer's remorse greatly setting in 6 to 12 months down the road is very high. Well, I want to prohibit that for my clients. I want to go out there and look, I'm never here to deceive or manipulate clients. I'm never here to talk clients into buying something that they don't want to buy or just buying period. I'm not here to do any of that. I am here to help them, serve and support them with accomplishing their real estate goals at the highest possible level. If they want to make those goals a reality, when they want to make those a reality, I'm not here to try to push, deceive, or manipulate anybody. But I am here to, again, serve and support my clients at the highest possible level with their real estate goals, if they choose to pursue those goals and choose to utilize me as the real estate professional to do so. Now, with that, in order for me to do that, I got to have extreme clarity on what is that they want, why they want it, why it's important to them. It's why I spend so much time on the dream home form, where I'm doing a deep dive into, I'm going through and I'm asking, tons and tons of questions on what they want with the property, the overall location, the overall area, the property itself, all of those, because they got their life inside the house, life outside the house. And I tell them up front that, hey, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. And I apologize if some of these questions might seem odd. I apologize if some of these questions might be repetitive. I promise you they're not. All of this is essential information for me to know and understand of, again, what you want, why it, why it's important to you. So for me, in order for me to serve and support you at the highest possible level, I've got to have extreme clarity on what your overall goals are, what you want, and again, why those things are, matter to you, throughout this process. So the great part about this, if you pre-frame this the right way, it gives you permission, because you're right up front. Like, they understand my intent going into this. So then I'm able to ask certain questions so I can identify and get clarity, not just on all the things that they want, but what their timeline expectation is. So I'm able to ask questions like, okay, hey, if you could be sticking the key, if we could time this out perfectly, when would you be sticking that key into the front door of your new home, turning that key lock, over, opening that front door, moving in the belongings to your new home? Like, what would that, if we could time it out perfectly, not saying that we can't, but if we could time it out perfectly, when would that date be? Okay, if I found you this home today that met all this criteria, if we found your dream home today, are you in a position where you'd be willing and able to move forward on this property today? Now I've already told them, I've already pre-framed it, with my no pressure policy, all of that none of this is, it's just so I can get clarity. So it gives me permission to go in there and, be able to have these effective conversations on what they want, why they want it, why it's important to them. And when I'm going through this, but also on their timeline and goals, but when I go through this, what I'm really looking for is what I call bullet holes, not band-aids. Band-aids are the shallow things. And when I say shallow, I'm not trying to make this of, oh, they're just shallow human beings. I'm not saying that by any means, right? What I mean by this is like people are like, oh, I want this type of flooring, these types of cabinets, these types of countertops. Okay, eventually those things are going to wear off. Those aren't the true deep pain points that are causing them to want to move in the first place. Yeah, right. Those are things that could probably be updated in their current living situation. Those are things that are going to wane off. They're going to be outdated at some point in the future. Those aren't typically the true pain points as to why somebody's moving. Not saying they're not important, not saying I'm not notating those things, but what I'm really looking for, but I look at those as the band-aids. What I'm looking for, the bullet holes, is well, hey, right now I gotta commute an hour. So I'm talking about location, asking why that's important to them. I'm always following questions. Well, why is that important to you? What do you mean by that? Can you explain that further? So I'm doing a deep dive into this for them to get clarity and for me to get clarity, so I can go out there and find them the right home, sure they're not making a mistake and so forth, right? So then as I'm diving deeper in that, maybe they're like, well, I got to commute an hour every single day to work every single morning. And that's an hour every single evening on my commute home. That's just gone out of my life. That's 2 hours every day, 10 hours every single week that I can't see my family. That's just gone. That's just wasted. I'm sick and tired of wasting 10 hours a day or 10 hours a week out of my life. Well, maybe they find this property they fall in love with because it's got their dream kitchen and beautiful upgrades, but that property doesn't solve the commute, problem. Now I can go have that conversation then with them about it, because I know that was that true bullet hole. I'm not saying that I won't go help them, right? If that's what they want to do, they're the boss. I work for them, but now I can have that conversation. Hey, I agree. This home is absolutely beautiful. So it is, it's an amazing home, beautiful home. And look, you're the boss. I work for you. I'll do whatever it is that you want me to do. However, I just want to make sure that you're not making a possible mistake here. Now, when we first started this process, you told me the number one most important thing as to why you were making this move in the first place was to solve this commute issue. And this property, even though as beautiful as it is, this commute is about the same. So my concern is after you live in this house for, I don't know, 6 months or a year, that stuff kind of wears off, but now that you're still stuck with this commute issue, it isn't solving, this 10 hours a week of your time that's wasted out of your life. My concern is that you're going to have some buyer's remorse because we didn't solve that true pain point that's led you to going out there and start shopping for a new home in the first place. Now, again, I'm not trying to talk you out of this purchase. I work for you, whatever you want me to do. Like, I'm having that conversation with them about this, right? But I want to make sure that, okay, we're talking about all these different talking points and handling those, right? So I'm going to spend a tremendous amount of time on that dream home form. Now, through the dream home form, it's not just informing and educating, it's also articulating our values. We go through this. When it's articulating our value, how is it doing that? Okay, when you are attentively listening to people, when you are doing a deep dive into what is most important to them, right? That's going to show that you're paying attention. That's going to show that you're intent. Let me ask you this. When you go to a doctor and you get that doctor that just rushes you in and out, that isn't listening to you, that just makes you feel like a number, okay, you probably don't feel that important. You probably don't feel that significant. But then when you go to that doctor that does slow down, that isn't acting like they're in a rush, that does take those times to ask you, how are you feeling? How is this, whatever, and making sure that all your questions are answered, well, you feel listened to. You feel significant. You feel important. Yeah, right. You have a much better experience. So all of these things, even though it's not just like with the inform and educate, articulate value, all of these things intertwine. Okay, so then the next phase, after I go through that, now I'm going through the contractual phase. I'm walking them through this Arizona State contract. We're walking through all the contingencies, walking through the inspection periods, financial, amounts, all of that. Now through there, not only am I informing and educating, I'm also articulating my value in there. So an example of this is, let's just say we're talking about the inspection period. Okay, here in the state of Arizona, we have a 10-day standard inspection period, which is enough time. But with that being said, we got to make sure that we're jumping on this, operating with extreme urgency, because during this 10-day period of time, not only do we got to get all your home inspections done, but during that home inspection, let's just say as an example, we're doing the home inspection, home inspector's up in the attic and identifies some cracked trusses. Now, as they're up there looking at those cracked trusses, there's a red flag that this could be structural. So then we need to have an order an inspection from a structural engineer and have time to be able to do that, get that structural engineer out. Maybe that structural engineer then identifies that, yes, this is structural, and is a big red flag. So then maybe we got to get some specialized contractors out so we know exactly what we're up against to get us some bids. So then from there, not only do we have to have all of that done, but then we got to know what your game plan is. Like, hey, does it make sense to cancel and get you out of this deal? Does it make sense to go ask the seller to repair this, or to offer a credit so we can get it repaired by the contractors that we've gotten bids for? So not only do we have to have all of this done, we have to have our game plan together. We have to have our game plan together in writing, signed, and delivered to the listing agent before the end of that 10th day. If it rolls over by 1 minute, you have now accepted this property as is. You've waived your right to inspections. So if you no longer can cancel, do the inspections. We can no longer ask for repairs. And if you do try to cancel for that, now you're in breach of the contract and you're going to be subject to losing your earnest money. So with this is really important that we get all of this done and make sure all this done properly and timely. Now, I want to make sure that you're educated on the importance of all of this stuff. But this is what I'm here for. I don't need to stress about this stuff. This is what I'm here for. My job is to make sure all this stuff happens, to make sure your best interests are looked out for. So I don't want you to stress about this. I'll make sure you're educated every step of the way. My job is to make sure all this stuff happens on time, the way it's supposed to, and make sure you're informed and educated and your best interests are looked out for every step of the way. So then I go into the next thing. So I'm just educating them on the reality of the contracts and the reality of the consequences that things aren't met. But then I ease their mind, because that's our job, right? Is to go out there and do these things. So yes, it's informing. Yes, it's educating, but it's also articulating my value through there. So then once I go through the contractual period of time, or, the overall contract itself, and walking them through all of those things, then now I get into my commitment to them. So before I jump into the buyer broker agreement, ask for their commitment to me, I first am going through the list of all of my services, of everything I am going to do to work extremely hard for them to accomplish their real estate goals. and here's the thing. I was talking with my agents about this just the other day. I'm like, look, yeah, you can have all these unique selling propositions. You can go out there and offer those if you want to, but it's not even necessary. Look, most agents just do a very poor job at articulating their own value. The general public, and this is evidence of this, looking at all those NAR crap going on, right? Go out there and watch these videos or read these articles and read all the negative comments from the consumer. They don't realize all the crap that we do for them, all the, the countless evenings and all the sacrifices and all the hard work that we put in behind the scenes, and that we just, like, the consumer has no idea of all the hard work that we do for them. They just don't know. And it's not their fault. It's our fault. And it's not saying your fault personally. Like, you might do a great job at articulating your clients what you do for them. But as an industry as a whole, we've really failed in that aspect of letting people know, all the different things that we do to work hard for them. So in here, now I'm not saying to not do USPs. I'm a big fan of USPs. I do a bunch of USPs. I'm just saying that don't think that they're going to make or break you either, right? You don't have to have them. USPs meaning unique selling propositions. But I'm going to have a list of, here's all the things that I'm going to be doing that I'm committing to doing for you, to work extremely hard for you to ensure that your real estate goals are to be met. Then from there, after I go through those, then I transition into, hey, now here's all the things I'm going to do to commit to working hard for you. In return, I ask for your commitment back. Now, how I lead into the buyer broker agreement is, hey, this is not committing you to have to go out there and buy a home. This is just saying that if you are going to buy a home within this time period, whatever that time period is that you agree upon in your buyer broker agreement, whether that's 6 months, 1 year, whatever, that if you are to buy, let's just say, for example's sake, for this podcast, you're doing 6 months. So this is just saying that if you are to buy a home within the next 6 months, that you are committed to utilizing me as your real estate professional through the process. So I make sure that they know right up front, hey, this isn't obligating you to go out there and buy a home. You absolutely, if we can't find you what you're looking for, even if we do find you what you're looking for, you don't have to move forward with it. You absolutely are not obligated to go out there and buy any properties. This is just stating that within the next 6 months, if you decide to buy a property, you are committed to utilizing me as your real estate agent. Then I just walked them through the explanation of the buyer broker agreement, what the structure is, what my fee structure is going to be, make sure they're educated on that, and then sign here and here, right? Just like a listing agreement, right? When it comes to that. So making sure that you are practiced, like number one, you got a great presentation in place and presentation consultation in place. And then make sure that you're getting in your reps and practicing this. Because again, you got plenty of time right now to start. If you haven't been already doing this, make sure that you're nailing it right now. Start doing it right now. Right? Get this in place. The more reps that you can get in, because this is going to be, there's no longer going to be a choice. So the more reps that you get in, the more confidence they have. One thing that I have my new agents do on my real estate team is in their first 12 months, I get them practicing their buyer consultation and listing presentation 1,000 times in their first 1 year. Not saying that they all go out there and do that, but it's something I push very, very heavily. I'm like, look, if you do that, if you get in there, because 3 times a day, 365 days, okay, that's going to be 1,000 reps in 12 months. Before the end of that year, you're going to be able to go crush somebody who's been doing this 30, 40 years, because you're going to have more reps than they are. So much of sales is just transference of conviction. Right? You got to be able to go in there with that energy and that confidence that you are the best guy to get them from point A to point B. The more that you rehearse this, the more that you have this dialed in, the better you're able to transfer, again, that conviction, transfer that element of confidence throughout this process. Okay, so that's my overall personal buyer consultation process. So now I hope that this is helpful. This has been kind of a different podcast than most, going through contractual forms and all of that stuff, but just wanted to shed some light on this. I hope that this has been beneficial. I hope that this has been helpful for you. And again, look, if you do not know exactly what you need to do to get from where you're at to where you want to go in your real estate business, I just want to end with this. I know I already, offered this earlier, but look, I know that there's a lot of you struggling right now in this industry. And when I say struggling, like, look, your business can be going up. It can be still growing, but maybe you're just struggling to go out there and get exactly where you need to be. There's a lot of confusion out there. If you do not know exactly what you must do to get from where you're at to exactly where you need to be in your real estate business, if that is you, I invite you to schedule a 100% free, zero pressure Zoom coaching call with me. We're going to break down an hour together on this coaching call. And I promise you, dude, I had somebody, I'm not going to drop the name of their coach, but it's one of the top coaches out there that all of you would know. This was just like 2 weeks ago, that's been coaching and paying a shit ton of money with this top coach, for over 9 months. And now this dude, like, he didn't move forward with my coaching program. This was just the hour free coaching call that I delivered on here. Now, this was a team leader and said that, man, I've gotten more out of this free, this 60-minute free call with you than I have with my coach I've been paying a shit ton of money for 9 months. Now I'm not going to promise that this is going to, that I can, I don't know. I can't speak to their other coaches or all the other coaches out there. But the reason why I bring that up is, look, I'm not here to waste your time. This is not some bait and switch. Yes, at the very end of this, we're going to spend 50 minutes getting you and your business dialed in. The last 10 minutes, I spent a couple minutes walking through what my coaching program is, what it entails. If it's fit for you, cool. If it's not, that's okay too. I don't beg. At no point in time am I going to ask you to whip out a credit card. Am I going to pressure you? It's like, hey, look, here's what I got. If it's something you want, cool. If not, that's okay too. You just let me know. We hang up. That's it. There is zero pressure. I've got a very strict, absolute no pressure policy. The reason why I stress that is because, look, I know that there's a lot of you that need this help right now, but maybe you're not booking this call because you're worried that I'm going to try to pressure you into buying some shit, right? No, look, I'm going to go through what I have to offer, what it entails at the very, very end, but that's only after I've delivered on massively doing everything I can to make sure you know exactly what you got to do to get from where you're at to where you want to go. And like I said, if it's something for you, cool. If it's for you in the future, cool. If it's not for you, that's okay too. I will not ask you for a credit card. I will not push you. I will not pressure you. Yeah, right. That is not my style. I'm here to just pour into you and make sure that we get you dialed in. So if you want to take advantage of this 1 hour, 100% free Zoom coaching call, go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. www.gsdmode.com Zoom call. And once you book it, make sure to watch that important video just to ensure that you are most prepped and ready for this coaching call so we can maximize our time together, do a deep dive in your business. But I promise you this, you will not leave this 1 hour free Zoom coaching call with not knowing exactly what you need to do to get from where you're at to where you want to go in the quickest, most effective, efficient, profitable manner possible. All right, guys, we'll appreciate you being here. Keep up the amazing work. Keep crushing it. And I will see you next time. Peace.